The night was not meant to exist in this place. There were no stars, no sky, only the churning madness of the warp, a sea of screaming colors that bled into one another like a wound that never healed. Within this infinite void of souls and chaos, something alien tore through the fabric of reality, not a demon, not a god, but a man. Itachi Uchiha. His cloak fluttered in silence as he stood on an invisible surface, eyes half open, calm amidst the shrieking storm of eternity. His Sharingan spun slowly, reflecting crimson ripples of broken galaxies twisting inside the warp. He didn't know how he had arrived, only that one moment, he was fading into death in another world, and the next, he awoke here, in a place that felt like the inside of madness itself. Whispers rose like waves. Names of dread slithered through the air: Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, Slaanesh, entities of pure corruption, sensing the arrival of something new. The warp had swallowed countless souls, civilizations, even gods, but this was different. Itachi's presence was quiet, too quiet. He was not chaos. He was control. The storm shifted. A shape emerged, colossal and red, forged from rivers of blood and bone. Khorne, the blood god, roared with a voice that cracked eternity. A mortal dares step into my realm without offering blood. Itachi looked up. His voice was calm, steady, almost disinterested. You speak of blood as though it defines power. I have seen enough of it to know, it only blinds you. The rage of Khorne shook the void. Skulls screamed. But Itachi's eyes widened, and the world froze. A moment stretched, one breath, and suddenly, the battlefield was gone. Khorne found himself standing not in his domain of skulls, but in a dark room. The air smelled of rain and smoke. A child wept in the shadows. The god looked around, confused. Chains of illusion wrapped around him. What trick is this? Itachi's voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere. Welcome to my world. The blood god swung his axe, but it passed through air like smoke. He screamed again, and with every echo, the walls closed in tighter, illusions feeding illusions, layer after layer, until even the concept of rage began to dissolve. Khorne's own mind started betraying him, his fury turning into fear, his fear into silence. And Itachi stood beyond it all, eyes glowing like dying suns. He realized something deeper now. This world, this warp, was itself a genjutsu of infinite scale. It thrived on thought, emotion, and madness. But where madness ruled, illusion could reign supreme. Behind him, 3 more shadows stirred in the warp. A garden of decay bloomed. 1,000 eyes blinked in impossible patterns. A seductive laughter echoed like a melody from forgotten dreams. The other chaos gods had noticed. Itachi lowered his head, fingers poised for another seal. The red rings of his Mangekyō Sharingan began to spin faster, burning like a curse in the dark. If this is illusion made manifest, he whispered, then I am already its master. The warp trembled. The gods stirred. And somewhere, deep within the ocean of chaos, the first nightmare of the gods began, a dream not their own. Silence, in a realm that had never known it. For the first time since its creation, the warp did not howl. The storm of souls, the eternal screaming of demons, the laughter of the insane, all had gone still, like a universe holding its breath. Only one figure moved through that silence. Cloaked in black, eyes glowing red. Itachi Uchiha walked the nightmare between realities. The ground beneath him was liquid madness, faces rising and sinking in the crimson tide, whispering names of forgotten emperors and cursed gods. He did not step on it, yet somehow, his feet never sank. His reflection in the warp's surface looked back at him, and smiled. "So this is where gods dream," Itachi murmured. He could feel their thoughts around him, endless, invasive, heavy as gravity itself. The Chaos Gods were not mere beings, they were beliefs given flesh. They fed on emotion, and the warp was their infinite feast. But now, one presence disturbed the feast. A human mind, calm as a still pond, standing in defiance of insanity. The first to rise again from illusion was Khorne. The blood god's roar shattered layers of psychic fabric as he broke through the remnants of Itachi's Genjutsu. His rage was no longer aimless, it was personal. "You dare twist my mind, mortal." Itachi's gaze lifted toward the colossal figure of blood and iron. "I only showed you what already lies beneath your fury." That answer enraged the god further. Rivers of skulls erupted, and from their depths, demons surged, creatures forged from hatred, each carrying axes larger than tanks. They stormed toward Itachi in a burning wave. The Uchiha's eyes changed, the Mangekyō Sharingan bloomed like red fire. A single whisper left his lips. "Tsukuyami." Time fractured. The entire horde stopped mid-charge, their bodies locked, their roars cut short. The world inverted, red sky turned black, and black turned red. Now, the demons stood within Itachi's illusion. The moons above them were eyes. The ground beneath them pulsed like flesh. They screamed again, but their voices were their own weapons turned against them, every sound multiplied into pain. And then, silence again. When the illusion broke, the demons were gone, scattered as dust across the warp. Only Itachi and Khorne remained. For the briefest second, the god hesitated. He had fought primarchs, slaughtered legions of Astartes, consumed worlds in blood, but never had he faced a foe who fought without touching him. Khorne roared again, yet this time, there was a trace of confusion in his rage, a crack in the wall of eternity. Itachi raised his head slightly. "You feel it, don't you? The weight of your own mind." The blood god swung his axe, but before it could descend, his hand froze. He was no longer sure whether he was swinging in reality, or in another illusion. Doubt. A human concept. For the first time, a god of chaos felt doubt. The warp reacted violently to this anomaly. Space rippled. From the ocean of decay rose Nurgle, his body a cathedral of rot and joy. From spirals of impossible light unfolded Tzeentch, the architect of fate, shifting shapes faster than thought. And from the whispers of desire emerged Slaanesh, whose beauty could blind mortals and gods alike. They surrounded Itachi, forming a circle of divine malice. Each spoke, their voices weaving through the air like poison. "A mortal who commands illusion," hissed Tzeentch, eyes splitting into fractals. "How fascinating." "Poor child," crooned Nurgle, his tone heavy with mock affection. "You carry suffering in every breath. Join us, and I shall grant you peace." "He's beautiful," Slaanesh whispered, smiling with too many mouths. "I want to feel his calm break." Itachi closed his eyes. "You all mistake peace for surrender." His words were not loud, but in the warp, sound was thought, and thought was power. The ground cracked beneath him, forming the Uchiha crest in glowing red. "You consume the emotions of others," he said, "but I have seen every emotion within myself and found them meaningless." The Chaos Gods leaned in, fascinated, threatened, unsure. Even Tzeentch could not predict what this human's next move would be. Then Itachi raised his hand, performing a single hand seal. The air screamed. A red moon ignited above the warp, vast, bleeding light over the gods. The Tsukimi expanded far beyond mortal limits, spreading across entire dimensions. The four gods blinked, and found themselves standing in a black void where time did not move. "Welcome," said Itachi's voice from all directions, "to the dreaming warp." Here, their thrones were gone. Their followers, gone. Their power, silent. All that remained was awareness, and the soft echo of Itachi's footsteps. Slaanesh trembled, whispering, "This is impossible." Tzeentch tried to weave escape, but every spell he formed collapsed back into illusion. Nurgle's laughter turned to coughing. Khorne's anger became fear. They realized too late that Itachi had not trapped them in Genjutsu, he had tuned the warp itself into one. He walked before them, eyes glowing like dying stars. "You call yourselves gods. Yet all you are, is thought. And thought is the easiest thing to change." The four beings screamed, their divine minds fracturing under the weight of their own reflected madness. Reality folded, colors bled into sound, sound into silence. As they vanished into their own nightmares, the warp itself began to shudder, unsure if it still existed, or if it was merely dreaming Itachi. And through it all, the Uchiha stood alone, eyes slowly fading back to black. "Every illusion," he whispered, "begins with belief." The silence returned, deeper than before, almost reverent. Somewhere, in the distant galaxy of men, psychers woke screaming, sensing the moment the warp had gone quiet. And in that stillness, a new myth began to spread, of a stranger who had walked into hell, and made the gods dream of him. The warp bled light where Itachi stood. The storm that once devoured souls now whispered like a dying fire, flickering between existence and dream. The chaos gods, once infinite, had fallen silent in his illusion, imprisoned inside endless reflections of their own madness. Yet even in stillness, the warp was not dead. It shifted. It listened. Itachi looked upward. Shapes moved behind the fabric of the void, fragments of time, dying prayers, and spectral wars long forgotten. His own presence had become a wound in reality, one the galaxy could feel. Across the Imperium, astropaths screamed as visions flooded their minds, a men with red eyes walking through a sleeping storm. Itachi didn't notice them. He was searching for something, purpose. "Every illusion must serve balance," he murmured. But what balance exists in a world born of chaos? A flicker passed through his vision. He saw flashes, armored warriors, golden thrones, cities of steel drenched in blood. His Sharingan reflected glimpses of the Imperium of men, and for a moment, he felt the weight of another civilization built on sacrifice and lies. It reminded him too much of his own world. He took a breath. The air was heavy, like breathing through sorrow. Behind him, the warp rippled. Something, or someone, had survived. A faint laugh echoed across eternity, high-pitched, distorted, echoing through dimensions. "You think you've won, little shinobi." The voice slithered through the air like a thought gone wrong. From the tattered remnants of reality, Tzeentch emerged, broken, but not undone. His form constantly changed, cycling through 1,000 faces. You cannot trap change. You cannot bind destiny. Even now, your mind feeds the pattern. You are illusion. Itachi's gaze shifted, unbothered. Perhaps. But in illusion, there is control. Tzeentch's laughter warped space itself. The air became color, color became sound. Each laugh fractured into 1,000 possibilities. Control is a myth. You are part of my design now. The warp does not die, it adapts. The god's words pressed against Itachi's mind like claws. Memories flooded, his brother's face, the massacre, the blood. For a moment, the calm within him trembled. Then, silence. Itachi closed his eyes. The red glow of the Sharingan dimmed, and when they opened again, his gaze was sharper than ever. You mistake memory for weakness. But I made peace with my sins long ago. The god lunged, a storm of wings and flame. But when he struck, the world blinked out. Tzeentch fell through endless mirrors, each one showing a different version of himself, dying, begging, forgotten. He realized with dawning horror that Itachi hadn't fought him. He had redirected his thoughts back onto himself. The architect of fate had become lost in his own design. When the illusion shattered, the god was gone. Only the faint echo of his laughter remained, fading like dust. Itachi knelt. For the first time, he felt the exhaustion of maintaining an illusion not just within minds, but across the fabric of existence itself. His chakra pulsed weakly, but the warp replenished it, unknowingly feeding the one who had conquered it. He looked into the darkness. Even gods are prisoners of what they believe. Then, a new sensation, something beyond the warp. He turned his gaze outward and saw the material realm through the cracks, an empire of dying light, the screams of mankind, the Emperor's golden throne pulsing faintly in the dark. The Emperor of mankind stirred, if only for an instant. His psychic awareness brushed against Itachi's like two stars colliding. Itachi felt the immense presence, ancient, tired, yet burning with impossible will. A whisper crossed the void. "Who are you?" Itachi paused. His answer was simple. "No one." And the connection broke. Reality trembled again. The warp howled back to life, scarred but alive, a beast that could not truly die. Yet somewhere deep within its infinite chaos, fragments of illusion remained. The gods dreamt still, though they did not know it. Itachi walked toward the fading light, his cloak brushing against the cosmic winds. He had seen war, gods, and the core of madness, and found them all the same. This universe, he thought, is just another reflection of pain. The crimson moon glowed faintly above him, his eternal companion in this alien hell. As he stepped toward the border between dream and matter, one question lingered in the void like an echo refusing to fade. If the gods dream of men, then who dreams of the gods? The warp offered no answer. Only silence followed him, the kind that feels like the breath before the next storm. The line between illusion and reality no longer existed. Itachi stepped through what remained of the warp's boundary, a veil of dying light and half-formed thoughts, and entered the material realm. For the first time since his death, he felt gravity, the pulse of distant stars, and the cold silence of real space. He stood upon a drifting mass of rock orbiting a dead world. The stars around him were dim, their light strangled by war and faith. Below, the planet's surface was carved by bombardment and ruins. The emblem of the Imperium of men marked a broken cathedral, still glowing faintly beneath the ash. Another empire built on sacrifice, Itachi murmured, his cloak rippling in the void. A whisper drifted through the emptiness, not a sound, but a presence. Itachi's Sharingan flickered. The air before him twisted, and a golden figure began to take shape, vast, radiant, bound by chains of psychic fire. The presence of the God Emperor of mankind filled the void like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "You walk in my domain, stranger," the Emperor's voice boomed. You wear the form of man but carry the weight of something else. Itachi bowed his head slightly. If this is your domain, then it is one built on endless war. I have seen such illusions before. The Emperor's golden eyes narrowed. You speak of illusion. Yet what I see in you is corruption. The warp's mark burns within your soul. Itachi's gaze lifted, calm and unreadable. Not corruption. Reflection. The Emperor's psychic aura flared like a sun. Do not test me, mortal. I have seen gods fall and worlds die. For a long moment, the two stood in silence, the dying god of mankind and the ghost of another world. The air between them shimmered with psychic tension. Then Itachi spoke, his voice low but steady. You built an empire to protect humanity. You sacrificed everything, even your own peace. But tell me, do your people still dream? The Emperor hesitated. The question, simple as it was, cut deeper than any blade. For 10,000 years, he had sat upon the golden throne, his body dying, his mind stretched across the void, holding back chaos. There had been no dream, only duty. Dreams are for those who can afford to rest, he finally said. Itachi closed his eyes. Then your illusion is perfect. The space around them began to shift. The shattered world below rippled like water. The Emperor's radiance flickered, just slightly, and for the first time in millennia, he felt something he had long forgotten, doubt. What trickery is this? The Emperor demanded. No trick, Itachi replied softly. Only truth. The Emperor's mind recoiled. The walls of his golden realm cracked, revealing glimpses of the warp beyond, not the raging sea he had known, but a quiet, dark ocean reflecting his own thoughts. In that reflection, he saw not a god, but a man chained to his own creation. The illusion collapsed, and the Emperor found himself seated again upon the golden throne, surrounded by flickering machinery and chanting priests. But something had changed, the silence he'd felt lingered within him, like a whisper that would not fade. Far away, Itachi stood upon the ruined planet's surface, the golden light of the Emperor fading behind him. He had not defeated the god of men, he had simply shown him his own cage. Even the brightest light casts the darkest shadow, Itachi said, looking up at the faint shimmer of the Astronomicon across the sky. He could feel the warp moving again, restless and aware. The chaos gods stirred within their prisons, their illusions beginning to unravel. The universe itself seemed to shiver. Then, from the horizon, came movement, armored warriors, colossal and silent, descending from the skies in ships bearing the sigil of the Inquisition. They had felt the psychic disturbance. They had come hunting for the anomaly that made the warp itself go quiet. Itachi turned his head slightly as the first squad of gray knights landed, their silver armor gleaming like holy fire. Identify yourself, one of them demanded, their minds shielded by wards of purity. Itachi's Sharingan glowed faintly in the gloom. A wanderer, he said, searching for peace in a world that cannot know it. The knights aimed their bolters. Holy scripture burned along their armor plates. One whispered a prayer, another pulled the trigger. But when the smoke cleared, Itachi was gone. Only feathers of black crows drifted down, vanishing before they touched the ground. High above, in the silent sky, Itachi's form reappeared, watching the ships depart. Even the pure fight illusions of their own making, he thought. He turned his eyes toward the stars. Somewhere beyond them, chaos was awakening again, angrier, louder, determined to reclaim its throne. And so, the shinobi walked on, deeper into a galaxy built on lies and faith, his presence haunting both god and men alike, a phantom no one could truly kill, because he no longer believed in life or death. The warp screamed again. But this time, it was not rage, it was fear. Across dimensions, the Chaos Gods twisted in confusion inside their mirrored prisons. The illusions Itachi had woven began to overlap, each god trapped in a dream shaped by their own essence. Khorne slaughtered himself endlessly. Nurgle decayed and rebirthed within the same moment. Tzeentch watched 1,000 futures collapse into one. Slaanesh sang to an audience of corpses that could no longer feel. And through their torment ran a single sound, crows cawing in the dark. They realized too late what Itachi had done. He had not destroyed them. He had left them awake within the dream, unable to tell where illusion ended and self began. Far from their torment, Itachi walked the ruins of a hive world called Vorgoth Prime. The city stretched into the clouds like broken bones, a necropolis of metal and smoke. He felt millions of lives beneath his feet, humans born only to serve, to fight, to die. The pain here was not divine. It was human. He passed murals of the Emperor, painted in gold but cracked and fading. Pilgrims knelt before statues that wept rust. To them, this was holy ground. To Itachi, it was the graveyard of dreams. He heard a sound, laughter. Fragile, human. A child. In the shadows of a collapsed cathedral, a girl sat clutching a broken rosary, humming a tune to drown the screams of the dying above. Her eyes were wide with terror, yet when she saw him, she stopped trembling. "Are you an angel?" she asked softly. Itachi knelt beside her. "No," he said. "Just someone who remembers what pain looks like." She stared at his eyes, mesmerized by the faint red glow. "The sky burns every night now," she whispered. "They say the gods are angry." Itachi looked upward. The warp's reflection shimmered through the clouds like a wound opening across space. "The gods are always angry," he replied. "They just found someone who could make them listen." The ground shook. Screams echoed from the upper levels, a warp rift blooming above the city. From its bleeding edges, demons poured out, their forms melting and reforming, pulled by invisible strings. The illusions of the gods were bleeding into reality. Itachi rose, his cloak swirling. The girl hid behind him as the air turned crimson. "Stay behind me," he said. He raised his hand. The Mangekyō Sharingan ignited once more. The demons froze mid-charge, their forms twitching like broken puppets. With a single motion, Itachi snapped his fingers, and they dissolved into black feathers, scattered into the wind. The rift pulsed again. From its depths came a song, soft, seductive, poisonous. The voice of Slaanesh, or what was left of it. "You can't silence pleasure, Uchiha. You only teach it to suffer better." Itachi's gaze narrowed. "Then suffer you shall." He formed a seal. The rift folded inward like a closing eye, its song twisting into a scream before fading completely. Silence returned, except for the soft sob of the girl behind him. He turned. She stared at the vanished rift, tears streaking her soot-covered face. "Is it over?" "For now," he said quietly. "But peace never lasts here." She held his sleeve. "Then stay. Please." For the first time, Itachi hesitated. The child's plea carried no illusion, only hope. But hope was a fragile thing in a universe built on lies. He gently placed a hand on her head. When you wake, remember this moment as truth, he said. Even if the world tells you it's a dream. Her eyes closed. She fell into sleep, safe for now, a rare miracle in the galaxy's endless night. Itachi stepped away. His form began to fade into crows once more, scattering into the smoke-filled sky. As he vanished, a whisper spread through the hive, of a black-cloaked wanderer who silenced demons with a glance and left only peace in his wake. And in the warp, the chaos gods stirred again, not free, but restless. They had begun to sing the same song the child hummed, unaware it was Itachi's illusion echoing through eternity. The warp itself was dreaming, and Itachi had become its dreamer. The galaxy had forgotten silence. But now, every psychic mind, from the lowliest psyker to the high lords of Terra, felt it. Something vast had changed. The warp was no longer screaming. It was mourning. Itachi walked through space as though through fog. He no longer felt his body, he moved like a thought drifting between dying stars. Fragments of forgotten prayers and battle cries surrounded him, echoes of worlds devoured by chaos and faith alike. The illusions he had cast upon the chaos gods still held, but their dreams began to bleed through reality like infection through cloth. Demons appeared and vanished without command, whispering Itachi's name as though it were a curse and a prayer at once. "You made the gods dream," came a voice behind him, ancient and full of grief. "Now their dreams are unmaking everything." Itachi turned. A being of light and decay approached, Nurgle. But this time, the plague god was smaller, his form flickering like smoke around a dying ember. His laughter was gone, replaced by the sound of slow breathing. "You pity them," Itachi said quietly. "That's not something gods should feel." Nurgle smiled, his face sagging like melting wax. "Pity, yes. We are the children of mankind's despair. And you've poisoned our mother, their fear." He gestured to the stars. Itachi looked, and saw something terrible. The warp was losing color. The storms were fading. The gods' power, which once fed on mortal sin and madness, was draining into stillness. Humanity's nightmares were dying, but so were their dreams. Itachi understood at once. His Genjutsu, spread across the psychic sea, had begun to neutralize imagination itself. "You're destroying us," Nurgle said softly, almost lovingly. "And when we fade, mankind follows. They cannot exist without fear." Itachi's expression did not change, but his eyes flickered, a single moment of hesitation. Could it be true? Had peace become another illusion, just as poisonous as chaos? "If their peace depends on suffering," he replied, "then it was never real." Nurgle tilted his head. "Then what is real, little dreamer?" The question lingered in the void like a knife. Itachi had no answer. The plague god laughed, a weak, wheezing sound. "You see. Even you cannot define truth. You made gods dream, but you do not know if you're awake yourself." For a moment, Itachi saw something he had not expected. Nurgle's eyes filled with tears. "You've given me a gift, shinobi," the god said. "For the first time, I understand sadness." The god's body began to dissolve, like ash in wind. As he faded, his last words drifted through the dark. "When you destroy monsters, you become their dream." Itachi stood alone once more, surrounded by silence. His Genjutsu had achieved what no weapon could, it had silenced chaos. But the price was becoming clear. Without chaos, without emotion, the universe itself was beginning to slow, to wither, to stop feeling. He closed his eyes, sensing every corner of the galaxy, every prayer, every scream, every heartbeat. All fading. For the first time, he felt something like fear. Not for himself, but for the balance that bound all things. I sought peace, he whispered. But peace without conflict is emptiness. A shadow moved beside him, not divine, not human. The voice that spoke was cold, logical, and cruel. Then perhaps you should meet those who understand balance. Itachi turned. Before him stood a warrior in ancient armor, his presence radiating authority, an Eldar Farser, surrounded by spectral light. Behind him, the stars bent under psychic control. You have touched the heart of the warp, the Farser said. And you have broken what should never be broken. Now, even we, the Eldari, feel the silence. Itachi said nothing. If chaos falls, the Farser continued, the warp collapses, and reality dies. Even gods must exist for the universe to breathe. The words sank into Itachi's mind like cold rain. For the first time since his arrival, he questioned not how to fight, but why. He looked out into the fading stars. Then I must wake them, he whispered. The Farser frowned. Wake the chaos gods. You would undo what you've won. Victory is meaningless, Itachi said. If all that's left is silence. The Eldar's gaze hardened. Then you are either a savior, or the last mistake this galaxy will ever make. The warp trembled as Itachi prepared to do the unthinkable, awaken the very monsters he had put to sleep. He had seen universes collapse into silence before. He knew stillness was only another kind of death. If chaos was the heart of madness, then perhaps it was also the pulse that kept reality alive. He stood at the edge of the psychic storm, a black sea frozen in place. No color. No sound. Only endless quiet. Itachi drew a single kunai and sliced his palm. Blood fell into the void, glowing faintly crimson. The warp stirred at once. The blood of a dreamer, of one who had mastered illusion, was the one thing that could bridge the gap between what was real and what was not. He closed his eyes and whispered. Tsukuyomi, reverse. The universe shuddered. Red moonlight flared across the warp, splitting its frozen calm. From the silent depths rose the remnants of the chaos gods, shapes half-formed, screaming not in rage but confusion, like children waking from a nightmare they didn't understand. Khorne's chains dragged behind him, heavy with his own blood. Nurgle's garden bloomed black flowers that wept acid. Tzeentch's thousand eyes blinked in terrified rhythm. Slaanesh crawled on hands made of mirrors, reflecting nothing but Itachi's face. You dare wake us? Khorne bellowed. His voice broke like thunder over dead seas. You bound us in our own lies, and now you call us back. Itachi opened his eyes, Mangekyō gleaming like two dying suns. Without you, he said quietly, the universe ceases to feel. Without feeling, it dies. The gods paused. The truth in his words was undeniable, even to beings who fed on deceit. But Tzeentch laughed, a fractured, shifting sound. Then you admit it, shinobi. You need us. You need chaos to define order. No, Itachi replied. I need balance. Chaos without control is destruction. Order without chaos is decay. Slaanesh slithered forward, smiling with 1,000 mouths. And who will decide that balance, little human? You. Itachi raised his blood-stained hand. I will not decide it. I will carry it. The warp howled. Chains of red light erupted around him, not to imprison, but to connect. For the first time, the power of the Sharingan did not command illusion, it created equilibrium. Each god felt their essence drawn into a single, fragile thread that passed through Itachi's soul. The pain was unimaginable. Every sin, every scream, every lie in the galaxy tore through him at once. He felt the weight of every death caused by chaos, and every one caused by those who fought it. Blood poured from his eyes, his nose, his mouth, but he did not falter. If this is the price, he whispered, then so be it. The warp roared back to life. Stars flared again in real space. Psychers gasped as nightmares returned, and so did hope, and creativity, and love. The balance had been restored. But the gods were not the same. Bound by his will, they no longer ruled. They endured, like storms held within glass. Each one bowed its head slightly before him, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. We will remember this, mortal, Khorne growled. Even gods bleed in your illusion. Itachi, barely standing, gave a faint smile. Then perhaps even gods can learn. The gods faded back into the warp, their laughter softer now, their hunger restrained. The balance trembled, fragile but alive. Itachi fell to his knees. His body flickered like an image on broken film. He had poured too much of himself into the cosmic link. From the fading shadows, the Eldar Farser appeared once more. You did it, the seer said. But your blood stains every thread of fate now. You are part of the warp, and it will never let you go. Itachi's eyes dimmed, their crimson glow fading to dusk. Then I will stay where balance is needed. He looked up at the void, now alive with violent color, and smiled faintly. Let them dream again, but never without consequence. As his form dissolved into feathers, the warp whispered his name, not as a god, not as a monster, but as a keeper. The warp no longer screamed. It pulsed, steady, rhythmic, alive. But in its depths, a new presence lingered, quiet as ash after flame. Itachi Uchiha had not died. He had become something else. He drifted between dimensions, no longer flesh and bone, but a consciousness woven through the fabric of thought itself. Every human dream, every demon's whisper, carried a fragment of his presence. He was not a god, he was a mirror, reflecting the truth of what both mortals and deities feared most, themselves. Across the galaxy, psychers began to speak of a shadow seen in the corner of their visions, a man with bleeding eyes, standing beneath a red moon. Those who saw him woke screaming. Those who didn't, began to forget their dreams entirely. On a distant imperial world, Cadrius IX, a regiment of the Astra Militarum fought to hold back a demonic resurgence. The sky split open, but no warp storm followed. Instead, a faint shimmer of crows appeared, circling in silence. Every soldier felt a chill pass through their soul, like being observed by something far older than gods. The commanding officer, a scarred veteran named Varek Holt, raised his plasma pistol toward the strange light. "Identify yourself," he shouted into the storm. The light folded. From it stepped Itachi, draped in shadow, his Akatsuki cloak torn and scorched, his eyes dimmed but still burning with impossible calm. "Your world teeters," he said, voice low but clear. "The warp tests its balance." Varek's hands trembled. "Are you a demon?" Itachi paused. "No. But I've been one in the eyes of others." Before the soldier could respond, the ground ruptured, demons spilling forth in waves, their forms twisted by the confusion of the newly balanced warp. They did not serve the gods anymore, they sought direction. They were chaos without purpose. Itachi stepped forward. His shadow stretched across the battlefield, splitting into dozens, then hundreds, each bearing his crimson eyes. The soldiers froze as the sky turned red, not from blood, but from memory. Tsukuyumi, balance. The words echoed like thunder. The demons screamed, their bodies unraveling into smoke, each one forced to relive its own creation, every lie, every desire, every violent birth. And when the light faded, the demons were gone. The battlefield was silent. The soldiers stared in disbelief. Varek dropped to one knee, whispering, "Emperor, protect us, what are you?" Itachi's gaze softened. A consequence. Far beyond, in the immaterial void, the Chaos Gods watched. Their forms were quieter now, their arrogance dulled by awareness. They no longer saw Itachi as prey or threat, but as equilibrium incarnate. Still, not all were content. Tzeentch's laughter rippled faintly through the warp. He thinks he's brought balance. But even balance is a plan, and plans belong to me. Khorne growled in reply, his voice heavy with reluctant respect. Let him keep his illusion. The galaxy bleeds still, and where there's blood, there's purpose. Only Slaanesh whispered differently. He's beautiful in suffering. I wonder how long he can bear perfection before he craves the pain again. Their words faded into distance as Itachi's spirit moved deeper, becoming one with the psychic currents. He found himself before a reflection, a mirror of black glass stretching into infinity. In it, he saw not the man he once was, but the collective fear of every being alive. Warhammer's eternal chaos. Humanity's despair. Even the whisper of the Uchiha curse. He raised a hand toward the reflection. It shivered, and his own face stared back, bleeding, weary, eternal. Peace is not the absence of pain, he murmured. It's the understanding of it. The reflection blinked. And for the first time, it smiled. Then the mirror cracked, and light spilled through, forming the shape of countless eyes in the void. Everywhere in the galaxy, people began to dream again, vividly, painfully, beautifully. The warp stabilized. Balance endured. Itachi turned away, fading once more into 1,000 crows. The echo of his final words carried through every nightmare and vision alike. Dream wisely. For even gods can bleed. The warp breathed again. It no longer screamed, nor whispered. It dreamed, and in that dream, a shadow moved between galaxies, neither alive nor dead. Itachi Uchiha had become the keeper of equilibrium, the unseen guardian of the thin line that separated sanity from oblivion. But balance, as he learned, was never still. Every act of peace created its echo of conflict. Every silence invited a new scream to be born somewhere in the void. And something had begun to stir within that silence. Something ancient. Something even the Chaos Gods feared. In the deepest corner of the Imperium, beyond the reach of gods or mortals, a new consciousness was forming, a wound that bled ideas instead of blood. It called itself the Undreamed. It was born from the fragments of illusions Itachi had shattered, the remnants of forgotten nightmares, denied their chance to exist. Each false world he had destroyed in the minds of demons and gods had fused together into this singular entity. And now, the Undreamed sought revenge, not on gods, not on mortals, but on reality itself. When Itachi first sensed it, the warp turned cold. The stars flickered, their psychic echoes strangled. It was as if the universe had taken a breath, and then refused to exhale. It shouldn't exist, he whispered. Yet it's the price of what I've done. He stepped through the layers of unreality, descending into the heart of the warp where thought itself became shape. There, among the broken fragments of his own Tsukuyomi, he saw it, a vast, shifting shadow, made of his own illusions. Faces of gods, men, and demons merged into a single colossal form. Its voice was 1,000 whispers in unison. You caged gods, it said. But what of the dreams you killed? The illusions that died screaming when truth devoured them. Itachi stood unmoving, cloak whipping in the storm of light and madness. Illusions were never alive. The undreamed's laughter shook the psychic sea. Then why do I bleed? It stepped forward, and every false reality Itachi had ever woven reappeared, his brother standing under the blood moon, Konoha burning, the faces of those he had condemned to illusion. The nightmare consumed everything. You destroyed falsehood, the creature hissed, but truth is built from it. Without illusion, no one believes. Without belief, there is no God, no dream, no you. For the first time since his arrival in the Warhammer universe, Itachi felt something he hadn't felt even when facing gods: doubt. The undreamed wasn't wrong. He had forced truth upon a universe that thrived on lies. He had broken the cycle, but perhaps that cycle was necessary. If I fall, Itachi said quietly, the balance dies. The undreamed's voice became thunder. Then let balance end. Let silence reign forever. It lunged. Reality fractured. The warp howled. Itachi's eyes snapped open, Mangekyō blazing brighter than ever before. But this time, something new shone behind the red, a second pattern, black on black, a deeper void. The eternal Tsukuyomi, reborn not as enslavement, but as revelation. He spoke softly, words that echoed through both dream and space. Then see, undreamed. See what truth looks like when it stops pretending to be mercy. Light erupted. Not the light of purity, but of raw, infinite perception. Every illusion the creature had absorbed shattered, exposing only the reflection of its origin, fear. It screamed, its vast body unraveling into images, faces, and worlds, each vanishing like dying embers. You cannot destroy me, it cried. I am everything that was forgotten. Itachi raised his blood-stained hand. Then be remembered, as what must never return. He stepped into the storm, merging with it. For a moment, Itachi became one with the dream, every fragment of illusion, every whisper of chaos, every shadow of truth. He pulled them together, compressing the entire spectrum of belief and doubt into one blinding point. The warp went silent again. But this time, it was not the silence of death, it was the silence before dawn. When the light faded, the undreamed was gone. Only a single crow remained, circling through the void. Its wings dripped with starlight. And within every sentient being across the galaxy, a faint echo lingered, a vision of a man standing beneath a red moon, his eyes tired yet infinite. The Chaos Gods felt it too. Khorne bowed his head in grim respect. He fought what we would not dare face. Tzeentch smiled through a dozen faces. He did not win. He understood. And that is far worse. Slaanesh whispered like silk. Perhaps the only perfection is to end your own illusion. Nurgle chuckled, a sound that now carried peace instead of rot. Balance suits even decay, it seems. In the warp's deepest layer, a faint red glow pulsed, steady as a heartbeat. Itachi had become more than a man, more than a legend. He was now the unseen pulse of the warp, ensuring that every dream, every madness, every godly hunger remained in check. He was the fulcrum upon which eternity balanced. And on a quiet world far from the wars of men and demons, a small child looked up at the night sky. She saw a crimson star shimmer, then fade. "Mama," she whispered, "I had a dream. A man with red eyes told me not to be afraid anymore." Her mother smiled softly, unaware that across the galaxy, every child was dreaming the same dream. The crow's call echoed faintly overhead, fading into the wind. "Dream wisely," it said. "For now the dream dreams you." The galaxy turned slowly, unaware that its heartbeat now belonged to a man long erased from history. Time itself had softened around the memory of Itachi Uchiha, not erased, not immortalized, but remembered by silence. On Holy Terra, beneath the endless smog and the unblinking gaze of the Golden Throne, a faint tremor rippled through the psychic void. The Emperor's Astronomicon flickered for the first time in millennia. A crimson hue washed over the heavens, a moon that was never there before, pulsing faintly like a wound in the sky. Billions prayed, terrified. But to the psychers, the scholars of the warp, and the silent watchers of the Inquisition, that red light carried something else. It was not rage. It was awareness. In the depths of the palace, a withered astropath named Sarah knelt before her scrying pool. For weeks, her visions had been haunted by feathers, black as the void, falling over burning stars. Now, the water in her pool shimmered. A face appeared, calm, sorrowful, human. Eyes like dying suns stared back at her. "You are not supposed to be here," she whispered. The apparition spoke softly. "Neither are you. Yet we remain. What are you?" "A shadow that learned to dream." Sarah wept without knowing why. She felt peace, true peace, for the first time in her life. The vision faded, leaving behind only a single black feather resting on the water's surface. When she touched it, the Astronomicon flared bright again, steady, renewed. Across the stars, similar stories echoed. Eldar seers felt the balance of the warp stabilize and saw within its center a figure seated cross-legged in silence, holding chaos and order in equal hands. Among the orcs, mad weird boys began sketching crows in blood and laughing about the red-eyed Humi that made the gods shut up. Even the Necrons recorded strange fluctuations in the Imperium, a pattern pulsing like a heartbeat, rhythmic, deliberate. And deep within the Eye of Terror, the Chaos Gods stirred uneasily. Khorne sat upon his throne of skulls, silent for once. "His balance weakens the fire," he muttered. Tzeentch's laughter danced around him. "Or refines it. Even chaos needs contrast to remain chaos." Slaanesh traced a hand across a mirror, smiling faintly. He made eternity beautifully unbearable. Nurgle's gardens bloomed again, gentle and fragrant. He reminds us that decay feeds life. Even our corruption needs his restraint. And somewhere in their midst, unseen but deeply felt, a single crimson eye watched them all, not in judgment, not in malice, but in balance. Millennia later, the legend of the Red Moon became imperial myth. Children whispered that when the moon turned red, angels of feathers and fire descended to guard them in their dreams. Warriors prayed to a nameless figure with bleeding eyes for clarity before battle. And those who walked too far into the warp sometimes spoke of meeting a man in black, who told them quietly, "You are dreaming. Wake carefully." No one knew his name. But some began to call him the Silent Crow, the spirit of equilibrium, the dreamer who walked between gods. In a distant void between galaxies, Where neither time nor light existed, the shadow of a man sat beneath an endless red moon. His cloak rippled in a wind that wasn't there. Before him lay two feathers, one black, one white. He took both in his hand and released them into the dark. They drifted apart, glowing faintly, each carrying a fragment of his will, one toward the realm of gods, the other toward the hearts of mortals. "There is no peace without chaos," he murmured. "No truth without illusion. No end, without the will to begin again." His form began to dissolve into crows once more. Each one carried a single word, whispered into the emptiness. Dream. And as the final feather vanished into the night, the red moon pulsed one last time, not as a warning, but as a reminder. Across the galaxy, millions awoke from dreams they could not remember, their hearts lighter, their fears dimmer. The warp was calm. The gods were silent. And somewhere, unseen, a voice whispered, "Rest now. The balance holds."